When this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, a Friday night out, a taste of communion, a routine checkup, the work rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, and life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be. We were called to be. We hope to be. And may we stay that way, better for each other, because of the challenges we faced together and overcame.
Thank you, Chris. Did you write that?
I did not. I can't take credit for that.
That was good. Very meaningful. All right, now we're in the midst of a playoff game, and I'm going to call upon Ed Gall to sing a song, and he's chosen Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Ed, you're up.
Okay, I'm up. I'd like people to join me, and I understand it's a big game tonight. And here I go. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home
Dodgers.
If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes out at the old ball game. Go Dodgers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. That's great. Now, let's have some introductions. I know any visiting Rotarians, I don't think we have any on the agenda here today. So we'll go right to the guest of Rotarians.
I just want to let you know that Kelly is here from the Rotaractors.
Oh, Kelly Allen, that's right. Welcome, Kelly. And John O'Keefe, you want to introduce your guest? John?
Oh, he might be on mute. Let me check.
Yes.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce a guest today whom many of you might remember, Dr. Chuck McCreary, who spoke to us about meditation several months ago, gave a very good talk. He's a very good friend of ours through our school and our church. And I do a meditation with Chuck every day during the week, as a matter of fact. But anyway, Chuck is considering joining Rotary. So please be on your best behavior tonight, everybody, today, I mean, so that Chuck may want to move ahead with his application as a Rotarian of the Westwood Village Rotary Club. Chuck McCreary, I don't see you, but I know you're there somewhere.
Oh, he's there. I saw him come on earlier.
Yeah,
Are there any other guests? Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I'm honored to be a visitor here today. I really enjoyed the time I spent with you to talk about meditation.
Okay.
Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay.
Do we have any other guests? Well, we'll move right on. And let me see. Let me get the slideshow out here.
Somebody's raising their hand. Jeffrey?
Yes, I know John wanted to make the introduction.
John will make your Jeff welcome, but you'll make the introduction.
I'll introduce you, Jeff. Yeah.
Not right now, in a few moments.
Yeah, I'll introduce
you. More formal introduction.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
So we have announcements for the day. The foundation celebration, November 7th, at ball gowns and bow ties. Steve, do you have any further information on that? Is Steve Day on?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. No, not much more than I've already shared through meetings or through emails I've sent out. For those of you who have purchased raffle tickets and dinner tickets, thank you. For those that have committed to buying tickets but haven't sent the money over yet, or please do. And for those who are still considering it, we still have plenty of time. I haven't given up on you. So get those letters over to me with the checks, or if you wish, we can still charge it online and I can send you the necessary information to make that happen. So anyway, thank you to everyone. We're doing really well. I think we're up at like $4,500 now. And so I think we're doing great. But again, I want to meet our goal of $6,800, or exceed our goal of 68, which was last year's amount.
Now, Steve, it's not too late to sign up for the foundation dinner.
Nope, no. And if Kathy and you want to go, I got space for you.
Yeah, we like to go.
Outstanding. You're in. Anyone else wish to make such a commitment right now? We still have, I'm hoping to fill another table. We're 2 couples away.
Hey, Steve, would you confirm the date? The screen says the 7th, but I thought it was the 6th.
The 6th. It does say the 7th.
The slide is wrong. It's Saturday, November 6th.
Correct.
Excuse me, that's my fault, obviously.
But that's okay, Tom, because that focused us on that point. So
I was trying to get people to show up on Sunday night instead of Saturday. No, I'm just kidding.
That'd be nice.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Camp Pendleton donations are continuing through October 24th. So if you have any interest in donating baby goods or household items to Camp Pendleton members, speak up. Phil, you were going to speak a little bit about the Pageant of the Arts this week. Do you want to step up?
Well, what I want to talk about is actually the shopping spree for the Salvation Army. The Pageant of the Arts is going to be something I work on, but I want to talk about the Salvation Army shopping spree. I just want to kind of get people thinking about it, because it's going to require a little bit more work than in the past, where you're going to have to either go to the Salvation Army and meet with your person individually, and you can even go onto Amazon while you're there with them and buy your gifts. Or you can just kind of do a Zoom meeting and interview them and find out, how many siblings they have and mom and dad situation, and then go out and shop at Target or Big Lots. There is a Big Lots in the Culver City. There's also the dollar store, which is actually a really good store because they have a lot of brand name stuff for $1. So you might want to go check some things out there. But so I just kind of want to I need to kind of get a more serious commitment from people. So if that's something you think you want to do, if you can let me know or Diane know, I need probably starting next week. I need to start making a formal list. So it's usually the actual dinner is the first week of the first Thursday of December. But since they're not having a dinner, we've arranged for catering for the kids that day, instead of taking them on the bus and then going to a restaurant. But the gifts should be there by that day. So kind of drop dead date to get your gifts in would be the first Thursday of December. So the preceding 2 weeks, you'll need to try and get your interview in or your visit in with your kids. And so by next week, if you could let me know if you can do it, I'd like to try and get at least 22 people. We may need to double up on some people. So if you're interested in doubling up, let us know too. You can shoot me or Diane an email, and then I'll start keeping a more formal list next week. So I appreciate it if you could just, if you don't have my email, it's service, like customer service, just plain service at Scrubs, SCRUBS, Scrubs Unlimited.com. Anybody have any questions?
Excuse me for putting that past you. I know you want to talk about the shopping spree. So let's everybody be aware that's coming up in early December. Contact Phil if you have any interest. The district breakfast is October 19th at 8 a.m. As you heard from last week from Giddy, that'll be held. So, and one final announcement, in-person meetings. We were scheduled for November 4th, but I contacted Luskin Center, my contact over there, and they are having no group meetings until February. So we will not be commencing with our November 4th startup date. It's all been delayed unless somebody has a good suggestion to go somewhere else between that time. Otherwise, we'll continue with our Zoom meetings on through January. John?
Yeah, just a question. Do you know when we start in February, we're going to be doing some Zoom meetings still, like you were considering before, first and third live and second and fourth Zoom, or do you know that yet?
Well, we not for sure, but we had scheduled 2 in-person meetings a month and 2 Zoom meetings generally. And we laid out the schedule. So we'll work on that schedule, John, but it will be 2 Zoom meetings, the first and third Thursdays of every month, and the second and third. And if there's a 5th week in there, that'll be a Zoom meeting. So you can count on 2 in person if there's, I know Nancy had asked about having craft talks with in-person meetings, which are coming up. So you'll have to adjust the schedule accordingly. Now I have a little feature of the day, and it's because we've received several complaints from individuals that it's just called Zoom etiquette. And one of the things is I want to make sure that we're all kind of following some general rules here. Everybody should be placed on mute, and that is done by the host, Marcia, at this point in time. That when you're on, check to see whether you're on mute or not, especially during the song, because you're out of sync. Put yourself on mute and sing galore. I mean, sing loudly if you want, because nobody can hear you. That creates a out of sync type of a situation. Also, it's very important when the speaker is presenting, be on mute. We've had an occasion where someone took a telephone call and they actually were having a conversation and they didn't realize they were not on mute. And so it's obviously very disruptive. So another thing, adjust your camera location. Some people complain about, we only see the top of the head. Well, in some cases that may be good or bad, but anyway, look at your camera. You can see, you have it right up there and you can see yourself. So make it so it fits the situation. And remember, if you're on mute, you can still just press your space bar down, and that allows you to become unmute. So you can ask a question and release the space bar, and you're back on mute again. And remember, if you're going to take calls during the meeting, keep yourself on mute. Don't follow through. So that's pretty important. All right, at this point in time, I think it's let's see, it's 1:15. We can have an introduction of our guest speaker today, Goeff from the Southern Regional Rail Authority, but otherwise known as Metrolink. So people ought to have a number of questions for that. So John, you're up, and I'm going to stop sharing here. And we're
okay. I'm up. I am delighted to be introducing Goeff Forgione today. He's been a good friend of mine for a number of years, going back to his wife, Michelle, and our youngest daughter, Shannon, who were classmates and good friends at Marymount High School many years ago. Since then, Goeff and I have kept in touch through a men's group at our church that we're involved in. Anyway, Goeff is Associate General Counsel for the Southern California Regional Rail Authority. That's a long way to say Metrolink. Metrolink is headquartered in downtown LA. It is Southern California's principal commuter train that pre-pandemic transports 50,000 passengers a day across 521 miles of track between and among the counties of Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and North County, San Diego. Goeff graduated with honors from the University of Delaware. That's a state that's really become very popular now. He also graduated cum laude from Notre Dame University Law School. Goeff served between college and law school, served in the Clinton White House, and he was an aide to, here's about Delaware, Senator Joe Biden of Delaware. Goeff grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. Before joining Metrolink, he was an attorney specializing in business and commercial litigation in Washington, D.C., and then he was in the Los Angeles office of Jones Day, one of the largest law firms in the world. So now I'd like to have Jeff tell us all about Metrolink and what he's doing there. Jeff, go on.
Thank you, John. Can everybody hear me okay? Well, John, I appreciate that introduction, and you actually kind of covered some information I was going to cover, but it's very good to be with everybody today. I'm actually a bit of a wayward Rotarian myself, having been involved in LA5 and downtown a number of years ago, only to have work and a bunch of kids kind of pull me away from it, but I do hope to get back to it. But it's very nice to be with everybody today. I'm actually coming to you from the Torrance Courthouse in a small little room in Torrance, in the Torrance Courthouse. We were trying a 3-week wrongful death lawsuit in which the plaintiffs were seeking $40 million. And the jury returned its verdict 35 minutes ago, and it was a verdict entirely in favor of Metrolink and the defendants. So it was a great relief to us. And so it has unburdened me to be with you and to talk a little bit about Metrolink. And first, I want to kind of very quickly define some terms, because as folks, if you live and work in the West Side, I live in Mar Vista, not far from Westwood. Our Metrolink service actually doesn't reach the West Side of Los Angeles. What does reach the West Side of Los Angeles is the LA Metro light rail. And you'll know that as the Exposition line that recently has come through from downtown through Rancho Park and now is in Santa Monica. That's the LA County Department of Transportation, or what we call LA Metro. Now, for you savvy marketing people out there, obviously you'll realize immediately that there is a bit of a branding problem between my agency Metrolink and LA Metro. And it's further compounded because Metrolink, as John was saying, is basically a partnership of 5 Southern California transportation agencies, one of them being LA Metro. So it gets a little convoluted. But if you think of LA Metro as the buses and the light rails and those blue and green and red lines, Metrolink, we are kind of the double-decker long-haul commuter trains that run all the way up from Ventura in the north to through Orange County in the south. We actually go to Oceanside, North County, San Diego, but San Diego County is not part of our governance structure. And then, of course, we go inland to the great inland empire, San Bernardino and Riverside. And those 5 agencies send elected representatives to our board, and that is the Metrolink Board of Directors, who governs Metrolink. And I am one of 2 attorneys that advise them, and I also advise staff and help on the business side as well. And so essentially our mission pre-pandemic, as John was referring to, is we bring about 50,000 people a day from the outlying counties to the business and commercial centers of Los Angeles, and then bring them home safely in the evening. That's the heart of the Metrolink mission. And even though we've started to kind of branch out, we do Anaheim baseball game special trains, we'll do prom trains if a high school wants to do a prom. We run to state fairs in Los Angeles and Pomona, but the heart of the mission is to bring those commuters to the business and commercial centers and then bring them home safely in the evening. Next year, we will celebrate 30 years of operating in Southern California, Metrolink will. And we were first kind of imagined in the 1980s when voters in those 5 counties, Ventura, LA, Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside, went to the polls and authorized financial commitments to form Metrolink. Now, Metrolink, we have 521 miles of track that we run over in Southern California. And we have more than 60 stations. We have a very big system. We couldn't have that system if we had to build it from scratch. And thankfully, we didn't have to build it from scratch, which would be virtually impossible given the density and the cost of land in Southern California. What the counties did was they went to the freight railroads to Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF, to Union Pacific Railroad, the UP, who have had tracks, railroad tracks through Southern California for 100 years, much of which is to transport goods through the area coming from the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And so those counties came to the freights and they said, you've got a lot of excess capacity. We would like to purchase some rail cars, put them on your tracks and run them during the peak commuter hours. And that's not going to interfere with your goods and services. And so the governments and the freight railroads were able to come together in the early 1990s and to reach what are called shared use agreements. And Amtrak as well, you might know the Surfliner that runs up to San Luis Obispo. Amtrak and Metrolink run on the same lines, those freight lines that have been there for 100 years. And to illustrate kind of how fortunate we were in having those tracks available to Metrolink, consider the experience of the high-speed rail these days in California. You've probably read a lot about the California High-Speed Rail Initiative that was approved by voters in 2008. And they are really struggling to build that critical spine in the Central Valley that will ultimately become a high-speed rail connection from San Francisco in the north to Los Angeles in the south. But of course, they have to build new track. And to do that, they have to condemn land. They have to give reasonable value to the landowners. And that's becoming a lot more difficult than was first imagined. And it's starting to kind of chip away at the support for high-speed rail. I think ultimately it will happen. It should happen. It's important. But it just illustrates the difficulty in building new railroad track in the 21st century in California. And if we had to do it in the early 90s, it wouldn't have happened. So that's kind of the historical perspective. And getting back to kind of what Metrolink is doing now, and again, we don't touch the west side of Los Angeles, so the idea of Metrolink might be kind of new to you, but if you've ever seen our trains running, we are the double-decker long-haul commuter trains that you see running into Union Station. And the pandemic did take its toll. At the height of the pandemic in April of 2020, we had lost 90% of our ridership, which was a very difficult thing to happen. Excuse me one second, take a drink. And so since then, we've been building back up. We have initiated a very thorough cleaning regimen to keep our trains and passengers safe, and air filters and everything else you can imagine. And so we've been managing to continue to operate even with a reduced schedule, and we've managed to do it safely. And our staff deserves a lot of credit, because those folks who are still riding the trains, those first responders, those folks on the front lines of the healthcare crisis in the hospitals, we kept running for them. And I think they appreciated it, and we appreciated the faith they had in Metrolink continuing to operate under very difficult circumstances. Our staff, the Metrolink staff, we believe that those commuters, those passengers will come back. We are seeing some of them return now, which is great. Admittedly, it will take quite a long time for those passengers to, once businesses start to open up. You guys were talking about how you're not going to get back to in-person because of the Luskin restrictions next February. And of course, the Delta variant had a big effect on that, notwithstanding the extensive adoption of the vaccines. And so Metrolink is waiting for many of those businesses that were the heart of our business to open back up and return their employees to work. But we think it will happen. It will happen, we hope and believe, in the coming months. And so we expect to continue to see ridership return to the Metrolink service from all those places, large and small in Southern California, as the economy opens back up. And as we look into the future, you know, one major milestone, not just for Metrolink, but for many commuter rail agencies, are the 2028 Olympics, when, you know, the eyes of the world will be on Southern California, as it was in 1984. And before then, And in advance of the Olympics, what we've done is we've secured some significant funding under what's called SCORE, or the Southern California Optimized Rail program. And what that has done is it's infused $10 billion into the rail network in Southern California, so we can make improvements, enhance environmental sustainability, make changes to track stations. We can create jobs in the process, all in the run up to the critical summer of 2028, when the world will be visiting us, and they're going to be in far-flung places like the Paris Valley and Riverside, where we recently had an extension of our service. They're going to be out in San Bernardino, where we're extending to Redlands out there. And so even though it does cost a lot of money to build new railroad track, if you do it in a proportional, managed way, it can be done, and Metrolink has done it, and we're continuing to do it. And so if you take a step back and if you hope and believe, as I do, that we will move beyond the pandemic and people will return to public transportation, because before the pandemic, Metrolink was taking almost 10 million car trips off the road because of our service in Southern California. And that is important. And that's the direction we have to move in. We're never going to get rid of cars. We are still a car culture, but you got to give folks an option. And those options have to be thorough, they have to be well developed, and they have to be convenient for people. And so what's happening, I think, if you step back and look at what was happening before the pandemic, we are really in a golden age of transportation in Southern California. And it started really in 1990, when LA Metro opened that first blue line all the way down south to Long Beach. And since then, they've opened more lines. Metrolink started 30 years ago. We're continuing to develop. LA Metro has undertaken a lot of improvements to get people to LAX through the Green Line expansion, the Red Line, the Purple, all in an effort to basically take what were previously kind of standalone lines and create an intermodal transportation system throughout the entire basin. And that includes the west side of Los Angeles with the Expo line and the developments. And, you know, it was difficult for some folks. I know that even today, there are still some folks who take issue with how it was done and where the lines are, where the stops are. But I think now that it's there and people can get on the train in Santa Monica and be downtown without driving in very short order, I think it's a great service. And if I could share my screen, if that's possible, I'd be happy just to in concluding to show you the Metrolink rail system, so you can see how you can get down to North County, San Diego without driving, or out to Riverside if you're going to Palm Springs area. I'd be happy to do that if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm making you a co-host right now.
Thank you, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I share so I'm going to click share screen,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to go to maybe here.
There, you're coming up.
Okay.
Good. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, it's just blocking it. Let me just drag this down so I can get to it. Oh, there it is. Can everybody see that map?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're looking at the map, notice over here in the west side and the South Bay, we don't have that's not Metrolink service. Those lines are the LA Metro. You see this line to Santa Monica, that's the Exposition line. You have the red and the purple lines, and then of course the blue line here to Long Beach.
Jeffrey, we don't see a map. We see like a log or something.
Oh, maybe it's on the wrong.
Yeah.
1 second. I'm sorry. Let me stop sharing.
Chatsworth.
Let me try that again.
Santa Monica.
Oh, I don't know.
Long Beach. Redondo Beach.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm having some technological challenges here.
Atlantic. North Hollywood. Wilshire/Western 7th/Metro. LAX.
I'm sorry, one second. For some reason,
BUR.
this is
SNA.
let me see if I can go. Let me close that and bring up a different map of if okay, I'm going to try and share again, Marcia, if I could. I'm sorry for the technological challenges. Let me see if this is any better. Okay. Let me know if when this comes. So can everybody see that map there?
Metrolink. Oh, here's a map. Okay. Metrolink commuter rail system.
This is it. So
Okay.
if you look up the green line, that goes all the way to North County, Los Angeles, to the Lancaster and Palmdale area, and it comes down through Santa Clarita and the Newhall. And it comes right into LA Union Station as it runs through Burbank and Glendale, and then the black line you can see out to Ventura and up towards Santa Barbara. The red line there is out towards San Bernardino, and that connects with the kind of pinkish line that will run through Riverside, along with the blue line there, and the Orange County line, which is appropriately the orange line. And you can see that they all kind of converge here at LA Union Station, and that's our hub through which a great deal of our rail traffic goes through. And this is the Metrolink system. And if you follow it all the way down, you can see the San Clemente Pier, Oceanside. The case that I was referring to earlier that was just returned by the jury involved an incident down here in Dana Point. We run all the way almost to the beach. And so it's a great service, and I'd encourage you to kind of consider it the next time you're heading to a far-flung place and you're not relishing the idea of sitting in your car for a couple of hours. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you again, John, for everything.
Jeff, what are your passenger numbers now for daily from the 50,000 that you were at your peak before the pandemic? Where are you now?
So we had dropped all the way down. We had dropped 90%, and now we have recovered somewhat, and now we're only down about 50 to 60%, I believe was the last quote from staff. And the idea is that it will take another 12 to 18 months to fully recover to pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It seems like I always picture the subway in New York as being where rail transit should be. You know, people come and go back and forth to work, and that's how you sub. We've got problems here that we're so stretched out. And is our objective really to get people to go from outlying areas into the work-centered areas like downtown or Westwood or something like that? But I live in Westwood, so for me to jump on and go to somewhere, it's to Santa Monica, doesn't make a whole lot of sense on Metrolink. So your objective is get people from the outskirts of LA into the areas, populated areas where they work. What is your objective or overall objective?
Well, the overall objective is for all the transportation agencies to work together to have an integrated system. But Tom, you're right. You've hit on a dichotomy between kind of a smaller transportation network from, say, Westwood to Santa Monica. That would be the Exposition Light Rail line. But if you're talking about the larger connections from Ventura to Orange County, that would be the Metrolink. That's my agency. We're the long haul double-decker commuter trains where you don't want to just go shopping at Santa Monica Place. You need to get from East Ventura to Irvine for work. Then you're looking at Metrolink and our service that can bring you from those distant places.
I have two quick questions for you. One, the first one you may not be able to answer, but why, when they built the bullet train, why didn't they just take I-5? We own the land. The state owns the land all the way from I-5 all the way up north, right in the center divider. The state owns that land. They would have to buy very little land. Why didn't they just put the bullet train there? It seems really silly to have to go and buy farmland now. It costing billions of dollars. And the second thing is the new subway coming to Westwood. Is that your jurisdiction?
So the second one first. So the subways are all LA Metro. Those are the LA Department of Transportation, okay. LA Metro that runs the Expo line, the Green line, the Red line, and those expansions. With respect to your first question, it sounds pretty, it makes sense that they would have done it that way. I would imagine that there was a good reason they didn't do it that way. Part of it has to do, remember, with what is the northern point and what is the southern point. And because it's a bullet train, they do need to kind of, I think, make it kind of line up in terms of geography. I don't know if it would do that, but I think that based on the trouble they're having with acquiring land and getting through litigation and having landowners sue because they believe the compensation is insufficient, they have underestimated the amount of money it'll take and the amount of time it will take. But it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but that sounds like a sound approach to me.
Jeff, I got a question.
Yes,
how does Metrolink tie in with Amtrak? Are you complementary? Are you competitors? How is that part?
We are not supposed to be competitors. We are, and I like your word, Steve, complementary. Amtrak, so Metrolink is supposed to be the passenger train. So we make every stop along the way. Amtrak is not supposed to be a passenger rail service. They call it the intercity service. So Amtrak is not intended to stop at every station and compete with Metrolink. They're the ones they're the more kind of vacation-oriented folks. They'll run you all the way to San Luis Obispo. It's a continuing conversation with Amtrak to make sure that they're not competing for passenger rail service. But the two agencies, Metrolink and Amtrak, we do cooperate. We actually have a rail-to-rail agreement that in some instances, Steve, will allow you, if it is convenient, if you're a Metrolink rider, you can take Amtrak. If you're an Amtrak rider, you can take Metrolink. Metrolink has more stops, but Amtrak has the bar car. So it's kind of a...
Following up on Steve's question, almost took it, almost the same question. For example, if I wanted to go to Los Angeles to Oceanside, it sounds like I could take either one. What's the difference in the quality of the trip or any other difference? Apparently the number of stops would be a difference.
A number of stops is going to be a difference. I think also, you would have to measure capacity issues, Gordon. Amtrak, because of their kind of destination kind of approach to things, if they're running to kind of beach communities, they can be a little more full than a Metrolink train that is more passenger driven with stops at every, stops at every location. We think we do have a very comfortable ride. We have between us and Amtrak, I think we do have a better on-time performance record. But again, no bar car.
How about the equipment? Sorry.
The equipment is going to be similar. I think our trains are generally newer. And our trains, I think our passengers find them to be very comfortable as well. And so part of it is just what you're used to. Our riders are folks who have ridden our service for years. They know the conductor's name, they know their family, the conductors know them. It's a very intimate experience for our regular riders.
Thank you.
How about the parking aspects of that? Are you building land area around the stations so people can drive there and then take the train a long way?
In many instances, Tom, we have very comfortable parking lots at many of our stations. Generally, it doesn't really cost anything to park there as long as you're a ticketed passenger and you're going to be using the Metrolink service. We've also encouraged Uber and Lyft and other kind of transportation solutions to further cut down on, parking and driving, that sort of thing. John?
Yeah, here's a little anecdote with a question at the end. We have a place up in Oxnard, and while I was still working in downtown LA, I used to take the Metrolink from Oxnard to downtown. It was very efficient and quite reasonable. Now, the Amtrak also stops in Oxnard, and I found that if I took the Amtrak on the same track and everything else, it cost more money, as I recall. In fact, it was quite a bit cheaper on Metrolink. Is that the case, and why is that the case?
That's generally the case because there's two completely different pricing structures because of different agencies. Amtrak is running to different places. There's also they also have different labor costs than we do, and so we try and stay consumer and passenger driven, and we do try and keep those fares down. Remember, in most transportation contexts, the amount of money that a transportation provider recoups through what's called the fare box is never going to be sufficient to actually run the service. So when I talked about those 5 member agencies that make up Metrolink, one of their principal duties is to make contributions to Metrolink to bridge the difference between what we need to operate and what the fare box revenue provides. That's the case in every transportation agency, except Metrolink. We actually have some of the what's called the highest fare box recapture revenue. Before the pandemic, I think we're in the 40%, and a lot of other transportation agencies are in the 10s and 20s. So we do try and keep it affordable, but we do, we do have to make ends meet, and we do it principally through collaborating with large employers who can pay that money and give the benefit of that transportation pass to their employees.
Thank you.
How about safety? One concern in the evening taking any of these rails, we thought about it. Is crime a big problem?
So good question, Ben. On the Metrolink service, crime is negligible. We, with subways and light rails in the more densely populated areas, you do see some prevalence of that. With the Metrolink service, we do have security. We do contract with the Sheriff's Department to provide security. We have very little. Most of our passengers are taking the train a very long way, and so they are kind of some typically senior folks and professionals. And the other important aspect of safety, though, is the actual rail safety itself. Many of you might remember the Chatsworth disaster in 2008. It was the worst commuter accident in U.S. history. That was Metrolink. That was our engineer who was texting on his phone, and he didn't see a red light and ran headlong into a Union Pacific freight car and killed almost 24 people. It was the worst commuter accident in U.S. history. It almost shut our agency down. It was so terrible. From that, one of the things that came out of it is Metrolink committed to being kind of the leader in rail safety after that. And one of the things we did is adopt positive train control, or PTC. PTC is what we call brains on the train. It's a computer system with electronics on the train linked to the GPS and the entire network. And if the human engineer makes a mistake, the computer will override him or her and stop the train and prevent another disaster like Chatsworth. So it was a $245 million investment, and it took 10 years, but Metrolink was the first one to get it installed in the trains and completely interoperable. And we're very proud of that. And that PTC is deployed throughout our system to prevent and override the sort of human error that can cause a large-scale disaster.
Jeff, I've got another question about the funding for Metrolink and even Amtrak for that matter. Is there any reason to suspect that you'll eventually be profitable, or is it always going to be funded from outside sources? And what are those outside sources?
Well, I don't think it's realistic that we'll ever turn a profit. The goal is to recapture from our fare box as much as we can to fund our operations and run a lean transportation agency and be accountable to the taxpayers. I'll just give you this example, Tom, just for argument's sake. If Metrolink recaptures 40% of what we need to operate from ticket sales, that means we need 60% from our member agencies. And so that 60% comes from those five transportation agencies that make up Metrolink in a proportion to their size and use of the system. So those are taxpayer funds, and we take it very seriously, and we're accountable. We have a board, we have an annual adopted budget, we have audits every year. And so those member agencies keep us on our toes in terms of the use of their taxpayer funds to bridge the gap.
Yeah, I just want to tag on to that answer. It's not all about just getting the fares, it's getting cars off the road, it's getting pollution out of the sky. So it's not, I wouldn't think it's about being profitable. It's more about the environment,
sustainable, right?
And the everyday living way of life. Just having if you have to be in a car, having 10,000 less cars per day or per month, it's got to have some benefit. So
exactly.
It's not all about profit. It's
well
about
put.
a way of life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You guys are a very active panel. I appreciate it.
John, you're up.
Thompson has a question.
Who does?
Richard Thompson.
Oh, Richard, you speak up. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do you anticipate the work from home group of your passengers as having an impact on you ultimately?
It's a good question. I haven't talked to staff about that, the planning staff who would be able to answer that. My sense is that the pandemic will permanently change how people work in some measure, but ultimately, I don't see a lot of employers, especially large-scale employers, moving to complete work from home 5 days a week. And so because of that, we do still expect most of our passengers to return for in terms of their use of the system and to come back to it. But certainly it will have changed things, and it's just going to require us to be nimble and reach out to additional people and keep growing the customer base.
Thank you.
John, go ahead.
Yeah. You think we're going to have a train from LA to San Francisco? I don't want to say in my lifetime, because that may not be too long. But anyway, are we going to have a train from LA to San Francisco?
So that's the high-speed rail one that I was referencing. Yes. And the answer technically is yes right now. But every news story that you read about high-speed rail generally involves high-speed rail releasing a new business plan that does two things. It pushes back the time for completion, and it increases the estimated cost of the service of the construction. And so that's what's driving a loss of confidence in the high-speed rail. I mean, I'm just talking just from my own personal perspective. I love the idea of high-speed rail. I think it's important. I think Europe is far ahead of us, and that shouldn't be the case. There's nothing that should keep us from competing with every region in the world, including Europe. California voters made the decision to invest in it. Now we just got to get it done. And I'm still hopeful, but there are some big question marks because of those challenges that I had mentioned.
I have one. It may not be totally, or isn't your jurisdiction, but on the high-speed rail, obviously getting through the pass going up through Gorman is the difficulty. What do you, or one of the difficulties, what do you see as the best solution to get over that stage of mountains? Is it really tunneling from somewhere Burbank going out to Palmdale, or is it just using the existing 14? Or what, in your opinion, works best to handle that?
It's an interesting question, Michael. I would be out of my depth to try and offer an answer similar to the question that was asked about why not use the property adjoining I-5. I don't have enough expertise or knowledge of high-speed rail and their inner workings, but you can go to the high-speed rail website and look at their existing business plan, and it should provide the business and the geographical justification for why they are planning the route that they are.
Thank you.
I'd be out of my depth if I even tried to answer that one.
Any more questions? John?
I don't want to ask too many questions, but I worked in New York City for a while, and I grew up in Chicago, and both of those places are definitely public transportation cultures and not car cultures. And I think we got along with 5 kids and my parents with only 1 car for my whole, most of my life in Chicago. I don't view certainly Southern California as a public transportation culture. I view it as a car culture, and that's hard to break through that, I think. What do you think?
It is hard to break through it, but I think it's happening. I think people are open to getting off the freeway and making the investments you need to make, especially in the run up to the Olympics. We've got to be ready for that. We're not going to have athletes, stalled on the 110. That's not what we want. And so I think we've got to do it, and I think we are doing it. And hopefully, perhaps you guys can lend your support in speaking to your fellow citizens and fellow Angelenos to get the word out there. But I'm sorry to do it. I have a commitment at 1:30, John, and so I do need to break off in a minute or so. But I do appreciate everybody's time and attention. It's been a pleasure. And perhaps when I get back to my Rotary days, maybe it's time for me to make a change and take the train to Westwood whenever you guys start having your in-person.
We'd love to have you, Jeff. We'd love to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, John. Thank you to everybody. Take care. God bless.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
In your honor, we're going to make a contribution to the Westwood Public Library in your name for today's appearance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.
With that, I think we'll conclude the meeting and see you all next week.
Okay.
Same place.
Bye-bye. Same time. Amen. Okay.
Is Ed asleep? Hey, Ed, are you asleep? No, you're on mute.
I'm not asleep. I'm just meditating.
Oh, okay.
And listening.
Want to make sure you're okay, Ed.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, everybody. Hey, Marcia,
Yes.
I got you here.
Yes.
So what are you monitoring the COVID?
Oh, let me stop the recording. Hold on. Stop recording. Am I monitoring what?
it still says recording.
I just turned it off. Let me see.